Welcome to Geocache Adventures with me, Shadow Dragon 1, where I explore the world of geocaching. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts or on the Geocache Adventures Facebook page. You can also follow Geo Adventures on Buy Me a Coffee for a behind-the-scenes look on every episode. That's one word, GEO Adventures. It's free to follow, or you can become a member and unlock exclusive posts and information. Your memberships go a long way for helping support the podcast and are greatly appreciated. This interview was recorded using Zoom and may sound different than other podcast audio. Hi, everybody. Amy, Shadow Dragon 1 here, and with me today is fellow geocacher, Unitzoid. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to get started, I always like to hear what people's current stats are. I'm an engineer and I love numbers and charts and all that kind of stuff. So it's always intriguing to me.
Gotcha. Well, I've been geocaching for 16 years now. I started in September of 2005. I currently have 5,255 finds, and I've hidden 130 geocaches, 64 of which are still active.
Okay.
And if we're talking stats, I've completed the Jasmer, hooray!
Nice.
And I'm so close to that Fizzy. I'm 2 away from that Fizzy challenge. You know, they require a kayak or a boat or something. And one of these days, I just got to get out on either Mark Twain Lake or down at Lake of the Ozarks and see if I can sew that up.
Well, good luck with that. Hopefully you get there. So how did you first get into geocaching?
Well, I actually started with getting a GPS back in 2000, 2001 when they first opened things up. And I didn't start geocaching, but I was marking a lot of cool and interesting places. And in 2005, I was walking through Rockbridge Memorial State Park here in Columbia. You know, I was marking the bridge and Devil's Icebox, a few cool places. And a couple stopped me and said, "Hey, are you geocaching?" And my response, of course, was what we're now used to hearing. Geo what? They didn't really explain, but they kind of went on their way, and I looked it up online. Found a few caches here and there for the first few years, and then in 2008, I really dug into it.
So once you dug into it, you got the bug, and you've just been doing it ever since, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I became quite emphatic 2008 onwards, and I mean, there were a lot of finds. It's taken me a lot of different places. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, that's a great part of geocaching. So you're joining us today because you have a particular cache that I just find absolutely mind-boggling and very amusing because it's sort of special in its own little way. You have this particular cache called It's Maplewood. Mm-hmm. And a little background, it's a DT53. It's a puzzle cache.
Yes. It
was hidden on September 24th of 2011. And
Mm-hmm.
here we are, a little over 10 years later, and we still have no finds on it, which is just astounding to me. So let's talk a little bit about this. When it first published, like, how long did you... Usually we publish it, and I think after a couple of days we expect something to be found. It's difficult terrain, or it is a more difficult cache, but how long did you expect it to take before somebody actually...
Honestly, within a week or so. Because its 2 predecessors, It's Green and It's Sepia, were solved within less than a week. And it actually didn't start as a difficulty 5. That only came after like the 3rd year of not being found. It was originally a difficulty 4.
Oh, okay.
And a local geocacher, RDD, encouraged me to increase the difficulty.
Okay, so a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, it's not being found. What are you thinking on your end?
Well, honestly, on my end, I was like, well, someone will find it eventually, and I worked on creating other caches in the area.
So when a year went by, at that point, what was that like? Were you thinking that maybe this is too hard? Maybe I need to do something different?
Well, I mean, after a year, I'm like, well, I'll put out some others that have a similar theme. So that was about the year I published It's Burgundy and It's Pistachio, which originally was titled It's Metallic Moss. And yeah, the pistachio cache also took a while for people to figure out. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't, I won't say terribly surprising, because at the time there were many other caches in Missouri that had like years and years they'd been sitting out there without a find, especially around Springfield, where people would put out mystery caches and try to one-up each other.
Oh.
I remember one in particular, gosh, the name escapes me right now, but it was a cache that had a video attached, and you would think, oh, video, no problem. The person said, hey, I'm just going to take you from Town Square straight to the cache in the video. However, it was recorded at night, and they applied a kaleidoscope effect to the video. And to my knowledge, that cache was never found. It was eventually archived.
Wow. Okay, that's wild.
Oh yeah, I mean, the puzzle caches down in Springfield were crazy for a while.
Have you ever considered archiving your cache?
Oh no, never. But wait, now that you bring it up, maybe no.
This is what finally causes you to archive the cache, is my podcast. Great.
Right. Well, it's been 10 years. It's been a little too long, Getting lonely. No. I think that someone will figure it out eventually. They have to.
So you mentioned that there's others like this. So there's a series that this is part of. So how many are in that series?
That are still around or that are archived?
Let's start with total.
Okay, so I got to count it up here because I have a list. 10.
10. And how many are still active?
Well, of course, it's Maplewood, it's Limestone, and golly, is that it? Wow. 2 remain.
Okay.
That doesn't mean people can't solve the other puzzles. I mean, the links are still available on both the Maplewood and the Limestone caches to go to the others, but
the containers just aren't there.
Yeah.
So all the other ones in the series have all been found at some point?
Yes. I would say that the find log for Pistachio was the most memorable. Because Pistachio, as I said, it originally started as metallic moss. It's metallic moss. But someone stole the container within a few days.
Oh, my.
Obviously, I didn't hide it well enough. So with near coordinates came a new puzzle. I kept the same GC number. And, just moved it, I would say, probably about 50 feet away. And it stayed there for about a year. And at that time, there was a group effort to find it. It was RDD, DP Hickey, Scorpio 1537, and Fearless Knits. They brainstormed on it and came to the solution and decided that they absolutely had to get the first to find as soon as possible during an ice storm.
Oh, my.
So they drove out to this park, this hilly park, and they admitted to slipping and sliding down the hills until they found the cache. And of course, as soon as they found it, one of the trees nearby collapsed.
Oh my gosh.
Just big kaboom. And they didn't stick around very long, but they did make that find.
That's crazy. That's hardcore.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know why they were in such a hurry. I mean, I doubt anyone else had solved it, but hey, first to find's call. And RDD was one heck of a first to find hound. I seem to remember there was an event in Jefferson City hosted by Fried Okra. He was a charter member. Not so active these days, but he had an event over at Binder Lake in Jeff City. And it was like a spaghetti meal get-together. It was really cool. And during the event, while everyone's eating their spaghetti, he had published all these new caches. He said, well, I've got one I haven't told you about yet. And he read off the coordinates. And instantly, RDD was out like a shot, spaghetti flying behind him as he ran out of the pavilion. Everyone chased after him. They did not want RDD to get the first to find on that cache. And it was right there at the edge of Binder Lake. So, it's one of those water pipe caches where you got to fill the pipe and, plug the holes and let the cache float to the top.
Oh, okay.
And so everyone was trying to keep him from getting water into the pipe. And, there's this mob around the cache. And eventually there's enough water. And, it was bobbing at the top and people were trying to push his hands away, keep him from grabbing the container. And I was slippery enough, I was able to snatch that container myself.
Nice.
I just kind of looked at RDD, and I handed it to him. And there was just a collective no from everyone in the crowd. But yeah, no, first to finds are taken pretty darn seriously around mid-Missouri.
They can be taken very seriously.
I mean, these days, I think it's control freaks who ends up with a lot of the first to finds. I mean, it's published, and within a few hours, boom, they're there. They've got it.
Up here in the St. Charles, St. Louis area, this time of the year, they do the Caching Slaga organization, or Slaga. I never pronounce that right. They do a 12 days of cache miss.
Right.
So for 12 days constant, they post, and there's that special ornament for the first to find. And there's always videos and pictures of people fighting for the first to find on Facebook. And it's fun to watch.
Just a pandemonium.
It is. It can be like pandemonium. It's funny. It's neat to see a group so active like that. And these logs where people have just like, it popped up and we just dropped everything at work and ran out the door without, they figure it out when we get back. And it's just hilarious. Some of the logs and stuff that you get from these first to find races. It's fun to read about, which goes back to cache the 10 years with no first to find like that. Right. I'm frustrated by that. And it's like, and I keep looking at the puzzle and I am just absolutely lost, to be honest with you. And on your cache page, it says no hint will be provided until after the first to find.
Right.
Is that typical of what you do with your hides?
These days, yes. These days, I'm very much, as I said, the first find competition is pretty fierce in Columbia, or especially mid-Missouri. So I tend to not give hints for the first to find.
Okay, just to kind of keep the competition a little more fun for them. Or?
Well, it wouldn't be fair for the first to find. They should receive all the accolades and the prizes thereof of being the first to find that cache, including, in this particular instance, Maplewood would qualify pretty much for any lonely challenge out there.
Yeah, if it doesn't, I would be surprised.
And unfortunately, I have another cache out there, Degrees of Difficulty, that's edging in that direction as well.
Oh, man. Will it ever get to a point where you would consider putting out the hint before the first to find? Like if another 5 years goes by?
Probably not, honestly. Because I originally intended like a Werigo hint around the Maplewood estate here in Columbia. But I abandoned that idea, especially considering I had talked to RDD about it, and he's like, no, people should, get that reward of the first to find. Don't make it too easy. I'm like, all right, sure.
Well, if whoever eventually finds this will definitely have earned that first to find, I would say.
Oh, yes.
So I imagine that there must have been at least some outreach from other cachers over this, either asking for hints or see, is it even still there? Or what kind of outreach have you gotten on this?
Well, a lot you'll see posted on the cache page, actually.
Yeah.
People are posting notes to the cache page. I have received a few emails, most of which are on the tune of, hey, can you provide a hint? Or, hey, here's my thought process. Here's what I've done so far. How close am I? What do I need to do next? And, of course, I always respond with, sorry, no nudges, no hints for the first to find. I've had also people at geocaching events, of course, prior to COVID, that would ask me, hey, what do I need to know? It's like, well, sorry, I just can't provide any hints for this. The most notable communique was a person out of California who called themselves the King of First to Finds. And they went in great detail saying if I could just give them the coordinates, they would make this the crown jewel of their first to finds. And I had to decline their request.
I have so many questions about this puzzle, but I don't want to ask anything that would give something away.
I mean, all I can say is that it spawned, well, not intentionally this one in particular, but I was interested in the construction of these sorts of puzzles. It created an entire series. And I always encourage people to, work the series. And I guess that's as close to a hint as anyone gets really on it.
It is interesting. So for anybody that hasn't looked at the cache page, you go there, and I've looked at the whole series, and each thing in the series, there's typically a paragraph that talks something about art of some sort, and then there's a picture there, and that's pretty much the whole thing. And it's not necessarily a picture that has an obvious puzzle to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually, and it looks like it's maybe a layered picture it's all based on the color for that series color. So it's very interesting, and it's just absolutely mind-boggling to me, to be completely honest with you. I'm not necessarily the best at puzzle caches anyways, but I look at it and I'm like, I don't even know where to start, other than I know it has something to do with this picture.
Well, what's weird is it all started because of a potato.
A potato?
A potato.
I've got to hear this.
So sometimes I forget things in the fridge.
Okay.
I'm not as bad as I used to be about it, but potato decided to sprout.
Okay.
And I felt bad about that, so I planted it. Took pictures along its journey, the original potato before sprouting, sprouted in the dirt, and then finally in a garden. And I assembled these pictures and thought, well, this is kind of, I was talking to, I think it was Atomic Goat's Breath. We were driving back to Columbia from Jefferson City, and we were remarking about potato cachers, otherwise at the time known as armchair cachers, those people who kind of just solve at home and then zip out and find the cache. And I thought, well, I do have these photos of a potato I've been taking care of. Why not? So the original of the series was actually called Cache Potato. Oh. And had the description of the journey of this potato. And no one was able to solve that one.
Really?
So it was remade into It's Green, the first in the series, because there was a lot of confusion. Granted, about a month passed before I'm like, okay, I'm going to rework this. And it was named It's Green because the container was a plastic green pepper.
Oh.
And that's what kind of spawned the color idea. And then from there on, of course, the puzzle itself was color-based. It's kind of tinted for the container at that time. And after that, every container had the same coloration as the namesake of the cache.
Oh, that's a neat way to tie them in.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So which one out of the series, what order was Maplewood? Was it the third or fourth? Or
it was the third one I published.
The third one you published. Okay.
Yeah, the first was It's Green, and then It's Sepia. And dang it, I wish that Sepia was out there, because a lot of people really enjoyed solving that one. And unfortunately, the Columbia Parks Department trimmed the tree and took the cache, and there's nowhere to hide it anymore. I mean, it was a nice thicket close to a road. And with no geocover, I mean, it'd be taken in moments if I ever replaced it.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of those archived ones, pulling them back out and finding a way to redo them to keep the series out there?
Honestly, not really. I like each of them to be unique. I don't like to retread old ideas or old locations.
Okay, that's fair.
Because it keeps the location open should someone else have another idea and want to put a cache there. I try not to recycle spots as much as possible. Or ideas. I mean, each of the color caches is unique in the way it's solved. I do have another idea in the wings that's much harder than any of the ones I've put out, but I refuse to actually publish that idea simply because Maplewood is causing so much trouble. I don't want to, my goal isn't to put out impossible caches. I want caches that people solve, get a feeling of, oh man, I feel rewarded, this is awesome, and get out and, find that container and just that exhilaration, I don't want to just constantly churn out impossible things. I think the only real exception to that is degrees of difficulty, which is meant to be a very difficult cache.
Right. Oh my. So maybe I can ask this without giving So, like I said, I have so many questions, but I know some of the ones I want to ask would give something away. So you said you had the potato
Yes.
and the container came from the greed. What inspired you to make it into a series?
Well, I would just say It's Green kind of had a lot of positive feedback when people were able to solve it. So I moved on to Itsepian, same deal. So it just kind of rolled from there. I will say at some point, it became more about educating on how to do these sorts of puzzles.
Okay. And what made you decide to use, and if I ask something that you don't feel comfortable answering because it'll give something away, just tell me. But what made you decide to do like an art type puzzle?
Well, I actually have a background in cartooning.
Oh,
I published a cartoon for 8 years. And I don't provide the information on that simply because it was so long ago, and I've moved on from that.
okay.
But yeah, gosh, trying to think what I can say here that won't give anything away. Yeah, I can't really say. I'm sorry. I had something in mind there. It's like, oh, I could talk about this or this, but like, nope, can't do that. Sorry.
Yeah, this is I'm so intrigued by this, and it's kind of a hard one to ask questions on without trying to give something away, because we don't want to give something away, because obviously that's kind of your goal, is to not
Right.
give away information for the first to find. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I have like 1,000 questions that I would love to ask. But
Does that mean we'll get to title this podcast "Much Ado About Nothing"?
oh, that might be. I might. That might be a good one. Yeah, because I can only imagine people are going to listen to this and be like,
"Come on,
you've talked
anything
for so long about this, and we know nothing about it." But it really is just intriguing to me, and I have shared the cast page in a couple places, and I just post on there, "This hasn't been found in 10 years. Will somebody please solve this and find it?" Like, it is driving me nuts.
and honestly, I thought, again, the Springfield caches would outlast Maplewood, but they've all been archived. Maplewood, as of this conversation, is the oldest unfound cache in Missouri, and I really wish someone would find it.
If you get that email saying it's been found, are you going to celebrate? Are you going to have to like rush out and verify that it was actually signed in the log to believe it? Or like,
oh, I mean, if it comes in, I will be running out there to see if it actually been found. I mean, even from work, I'll just tell my boss, "Hey, I got to go. This is an emergency. I got to run," and I will be out there.
yeah,
And
I'm not normally big on verifying the physical log to the digital log, but in this case, it's been so long. I would definitely.
Oh yeah, and
I'm not sure I'd believe it.
this is not an invitation for people to post fake find logs just to follow me out to where the cache is hidden. Okay, please don't do that.
Yes, just to be clear, please don't. Please don't try that, as we don't want to cause an issue with that one and actually force it to be archived or something. But you're going to have like a celebration the day that this finally gets found. And
it'll have to be an event or something.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yes.
The It's Been Found event.
Hooray, Maplewood is found. I'm sure that within the ensuing days, the solution will go, everywhere, and suddenly there'll just be a slew of finds on it. Because that's how that usually goes, at least in mid-Missouri, is that someone finds the cache and other people having trouble say, hey, you found it. How do I solve that?
Yeah. I have to admit, I've done that before when I've been stuck on puzzle caches. As I've messaged the last person, said, "This is where I'm at. Can you give me a nudge? Because I'm stuck."
Which is great because it encourages community with, in our sport of geocaching. It brings people together and we get to meet new people and discuss ideas and even come up with new caches.
Yeah, there's a couple geocaches that you can find listed on the website that, like there's the deep gold one that's in the bottom of the ocean, and the one trench one that I'm marrying Trench or Myriad Trench. I'm blanking
The
on
Mariana?
Yes, thank you. And you kind of expect those to go unfound because it's like, who has that kind of equipment to get down there? Unless you're a scientist that geocaches and knows about it,
Right.
it's going to go unfound. But something like this, you actually would expect to have been found at some point. And the fact that it still isn't found is just what mind boggles me so much. Just, yeah, and I'm a little, if you can't tell, I'm a little bit stuck on it because I'm just like, why can't anybody solve this? Like, I can maybe get why I can't solve it, but there's got to be there's smarter people than me out there geocaching. Why can they not solve it?
And as I said, people have emailed me their ideas and what they've tried, and I can neither confirm nor deny how close they were. In case someone's like, oh, hey.
Yeah. And if I recall correctly, there is a geochecker on the page, correct?
Oh, the geochecker.
Oh,
yes,
my.
there is a geochecker. Well, it's because I receive logs of what people have tried. And people have tried canvassing entire parks in Colombia.
Really?
They'll up the coordinates by 1 or 2 digits and just start canvassing, hoping they get the geochecker to tell them it's correct.
Oh, wow.
Of course, at some point, the geochecker blocks them out and says, nope, sorry, you can't be doing that.
Right, it only allows so many.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, no, people have really hammered it.
Wow. So, okay, maybe I can ask you this without giving anything away, because I know the rules for puzzle caches have kind of changed a bit since they first came out. And the current guidelines, it has to be within, I don't remember if it's 1 or 2 miles of the posted coordinates.
The current rule is within 2 miles of the posted coordinates.
Within 2 miles. Does this one fall? Was this one published
you're asking
the requirements or post the requirements? Maybe I shouldn't ask.
Yeah, so you're asking a distance, and I can't answer that.
Yeah, like I said, I have so many questions, and I know so many of them can't be answered without giving something away. It's just driving me nuts.
Well, as I said, work on some of the others in the series. The introductory one I created was called "It's Not Blue." Kind of a spin on, I'm trying to think, Blue Sun from, see the name Serenity comes to mind, but no, Firefly TV series.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, it's at a Walmart. But yeah, I mean, that's a good starting place, and kind of go from there and just work through the series.
So do the archived ones in the series have geocheckers that are still active?
Oh, that's a good question. I have not checked to see. I mean, I haven't disabled them. So I'd assume that they'd still be up and running.
So if somebody was trying to get used to these type of puzzles to try to solve Maplewood, we could try to solve those archived ones and see if we're correct without having to go out and find a container that's no longer there. Okay. I mean,
suffice it to say, I probably won't be putting out any more color caches. I have other series I'm working on and other ideas. So, and I don't want to just kind of inundate with this one idea of how to put a geocache out there. In fact, yesterday I took some notes on some new ideas. So, I mean, I've got a couple more I want to put out on. I've got a tree series that helps identify trees, local Missouri trees. Help educate on that.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, there are so many neat trees that most people just don't know. Like there's the common hackberry or the northern and southern hackberry that have these like roaring protrusions. I've seen those all my life and always wondered what they were and how important they were to the ecosystem. And I mean, just introducing things like that.
That's neat.
But no, I've got some other series ideas I really need to get working on.
So are a lot of your series these mystery, puzzle, unknown, whatever you want to call them, caches?
Some are. Definitely the color series is. Now the tree series has been a multi-series.
Oh, okay.
Which probably wasn't the smartest idea. Because I have found, at least in central Missouri, multis are just not all that popular. If it's a traditional, people are out there. But if it's a multi, not so much. But for the multi, I felt that it was important to not put the cache right at the tree. To have, people observe the tree and use that information to find the cache.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
I have a Sierra Online series based on some old adventure games. It has a variety of cache types, including a Wherigo, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Let's see. Like sometimes I'll put caches together in a series that are just in a park or along a trail, so that if you're on that cache page, you can just click and get to the next one.
Cool. Is there anything else about your series or geocaching in general that you want to share with us?
Oh God! Oh my!
I know it's a very blanketed question.
I'm afraid of coming off as a crotchety old man, even though I'm not all that old. Well, a lot of it has to stem from I will go and find park and grabs, admittedly, but that really isn't my way of caching. Everyone has their own way of caching, everyone does what they enjoy. And there's nothing wrong with everyone's different variety of caching. Some people like those park and grabs. Some people like to hit those trails like the ET highway and just boom, 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 find those finds. Others kind of fall mid-range and, go in city parks and whatnot. Others, like me, will hike 12 to 15 miles to find a cache. Because we're crazy. No, I definitely started geocaching when it was mostly still ammo boxes out in the woods, and you'd have to hike several miles to find them.
Okay.
And of course, the goodies inside back then were more valuable, I'll say. For instance, I went out searching for archived caches in the Columbia area a few years ago with Atomic Goat's Breath and Fried Okra and DP Hickey. And we came across an ammo can that had not been found in 10 years. Coincidence? 10 years. Anyway. But no, it had been archived, but the owner never went out to retrieve it. And of course, when we opened it, there was this hiss, the air escaping after so long. And inside were guidebooks and not just your standard toys, but actually useful items. Back when geocaching was younger, you didn't have a lot of toys. It was more about, hey, this will help you with your hiking or with your exploring, your adventuring.
Okay.
So I definitely fall, that's the kind of stuff I used to find, and that's kind of more the vein I fall in, is the exploration and the long days. I mean, I'm not looking necessarily for a lot of finds, just interesting finds or interesting things to get out and do.
Very cool.
And as I said, that definition for everyone is different. So, and there really is no wrong way to cache.
That's very true.
Well, unless people, I need to step that back a little bit. There are wrong ways to cache. Because I've known people who have gone out and found archived virtuals where the user's no longer active and made finds on those. And it's like, well,
that didn't even occur to me that you could even find archive virtuals.
I mean, I won't explain the methodology, but
I'm gonna have to do a whole thing on finding archive caches, because I know some people go out and hunt them, and it just mind boggles me.
I did that for a few years here in Central Missouri, and I found, along with Atomic Goat's Breath, some really lonely caches that had been abandoned.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig into that one.
And sometimes it's not intentional. Some people kind of fade out from geocaching and they forget they have that stuff out there.
Yeah.
And other people are very emphatic about collecting their stuff.
To each their own, I guess.
Right?
It is it does leave an interesting aspect to be able to go out there and try to find those for some people. So.
Oh, and when it's kind of you always have that thought when you're trying to find an archived one. Okay, is it actually still here? Who would know? No one.
Yeah. Yeah, just trying to find a lonely cache can be difficult enough when it's been a year or 2 years or more and nobody's been active and the CO doesn't respond to messages or anything.
Right.
And you just have no clue. You never actually know if it's still there or not. If it's hidden out in the woods or something, who knows what could have dragged it off. So.
Well, and that brings about the question of throwdowns. I mean, when is it right to throw something down on an old cache? Whether it's, unfound or...
Oh, yeah. That gets into a whole other thing.
Right. And I know that Mark Twain Lake, when they stopped having MOGA there, of course they brought it back recently. But when Moga wasn't there for a while, you had all these ammo cans that were difficult to hike to. I mean, obviously by boat it was a lot easier, but if you really wanted to challenge yourself, you go out there and hike. And just these old ammo cans that you could spend a day out there and maybe, if you were lucky, find 15 or 20 of them. And they've been lonely for years and years and years. And if I recall correctly, that's where a lot of people would go, at least in the Slaga area, to complete their lonely challenge. And that's where, again, it comes in the question of throwdown, because a few times I went out there just for the adventure of it, because those hills, oh man, that is a strenuous hike. But yeah, I mean, a few times I came across a container that was no longer the ammo can. Someone had thrown down like a film canister, no lining, just a piece of paper that had gotten soggy, and they called that the find.
Yeah. It gets, there's some parts of geocaching that it's just supposed to be a simple family-friendly game, and then there's certain aspects like throwdowns that get into this whole controversial debate, and like it's
almost like you need to have a panel of geocachers saying, well, I agree with that. Well, I don't agree with that. Well, both of you are right.
Yeah, it's exactly like you could have a knockout, drag out, throwdown over something like throwdown replacements or or to mark archived or not on something. It's wild, the things that start to get kind of controversial among geocachers in the game. And it's like,
right,
but there's really no set rule. There's no rules that I've ever seen published by Groundspeak about that type of thing, and I'm not sure Groundspeak cares too much. Just kind of go out there and play the game, and I'm sure the people at Groundspeak all have their own opinions on the matter. And it's an interesting thing about these unspoken rules, and are you breaking them or not, and do your rules follow somebody else's rules? It's a whole thing.
Well, I mean, if something becomes big enough, Groundspeak eventually does step in.
They do.
That came up with requirements for challenge caches. Like, there was some like, oh, you have to find, like, I actually have one out there. You have to find 101 Earth caches. And of course, I manually verify that. And for a long time, Groundspeak was like, well, we don't really condone, we don't really support challenge caches.
Yeah.
Until they started supporting it.
Yeah. And then there were rules set in place and how it had to be verifiable and such things. And
of course, then you have those that are grandfathered in, and you hope that cache is still active to verify. Or if you're not caring about it, not active.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets into it's amazing the wormholes of the different aspects that you can just fall down and keep going and just keep digging through. And it
well, and that comes back to first to finds too, because that's another thing that if two people show up at the cache at the same time, is it the person who grabs the container? Can they just agree to first to find? I mean, it really depends on the circumstance. We actually had an event. Oh, I probably shouldn't bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Here in mid-Missouri, where there was someone out of state visiting. They were coming to an event, and they were about to get a first to find. Someone published a slew of caches, and one of our first to find hounds showed up, like just came screeching to a stop, ran up, pushed them aside, grabbed the container, signed their name first to find, threw it down, jumped back in the car, and took off.
Oh my goodness.
Because they had to be first to find.
Yikes.
Yeah. That was not so great.
Yeah.
The out-of-state cacher got a very bad taste in their mouth about the local geocaching community.
I could understand why they might have. Wow. My gosh.
And really, that should have, I mean, personally, that is a situation that should have been a co-first to find. It's like, oh, hey, someone's already here. Have you found the cache yet? No? Hey, let's work on it together because we're community. We're geocachers. Yeah. At least, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I have one first to find. And when I got there, as soon as I got there, somebody else showed up and we looked at each other and we're like, we both know what the other person is doing here at this point. Yes. And we were both kind of looking around trying to find it. and we found it right about the same time. I was like, oh, I've never had a first to find before. And he goes, you know what? I won't even first to find it. I've got several. You take it. I was like, oh, thank you.
Awesome. And I think that's more the occurrence than that one example I gave.
I think
it's
so
more
too, yeah.
that people are friendly. I mean, heck, how many times, I mean, if you look at my caching profile, there's some on my, I have a list of first to finds, and a lot of them have first to find with this person or that person or another person. Sometimes there are even 3 other people.
Yeah.
And we all first, because we all showed up. It's like, oh, it just published. Vroom. Oh, you're here too? And you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to find the container, no problem.
You see that a lot with the cache miss ones that Slaga puts out up here, is, you know, because it's a race. And I don't know how they decide who gets the ornaments and how that all works out, because I've never been there for the first to find. If I make it out there on the published date, it's the second or third round of people. But, you know, you see the logs, it's like first to find with all these people, or they just say, you know what, you have it, you got here first, or you're newer, or I don't know how they necessarily divide it up, but I do see that a lot with first to finds.
And, you know, I really do hope that when Maplewood is found, it will be a first to find, whether it be coincidence or a group working together to solve it. I mean, because again, geocaching is about community to an extent, and we all work together in this sport we enjoy.
Oh, how wild would that be if it was a coincidence after all this time?
That would be awesome.
that would be wild.
I know a few first to finds. I would kind of linger. I wouldn't get out of the car right away thinking, okay, someone else is going to show up, and this will be a chance to meet someone and talk to them and, you know, share some geocaching stories.
Yeah.
But in a few of those instances, I'll be like, nope, I'm the only one here. Darn it. Oh, well, first to find.
Oh, that's great. Did you have a cache you wanted to highlight?
Wow, I didn't even think of that. A cache to highlight. I mean, we've been talking about one in a series that I've done. I mean, whether it's mine or my own.
We have. It's kind of a highlight in itself.
Well, I'm guessing you're asking whether there's a cache that I've enjoyed that I'd like to highlight, not necessarily one of my own.
Do you have like a favorite hide or a favorite find?
Oh, that is tough because a lot of my favorites have since been archived. A lot of them.
We've had that before. Like a lot of, you know, that you can still. The nice thing about archived caches is you can still go see the page online and see the information and read the logs. And I've had fun just going through and reading logs of some of these archived caches before, because, you know, some of them, especially if it was a really creative cache or spot or something, and just reading the logs. I have a couple that, you know, it's just been interesting. Like even like some of these unfound ones, like we were talking about Deep Gold, I have a watch page that I put them on my watch page because people post some hilarious notes on that stuff. And I love to see it pop up. And sometimes I just get so much fun out of find logs and notes on cache pages that, you know, it's almost as fun as finding a geocache sometimes.
Right. Oh, and you know, there are so many things to read and so many different opinions and experiences for getting to the cache. I think that's why I'm tooting my own horn a little bit. I probably should have included this in the intro section, but that's why every single one of my logs is unique. I don't copy paste any of my logs. I want there to be basically a diary or a journal of my adventures while geocaching. And sometimes that gets difficult, especially, there was one time Atomic Goat's Breath and I went to Indiana to do the Back Home series, and we did 156 caches in one day.
Wow.
And it took me a month and a half to write all those logs.
Yeah.
They all had to be different.
Yeah, if it's like a power trail or something, that can get kind of hard to make something unique.
Right.
And I think there's certain instances where the COs kind of expect you're maybe not going to get as many unique logs if it's something like a power trail of 50 plus caches. But I think you could still do things like write a unique first log and a unique last log.
Right.
even if you don't do anything unique for the ones in between?
Well, the thing is, I take my promises seriously, and I promised myself that when I started geocaching. So I'm going to.
Well, I think that's awesome that you do that. I really do.
I think it's part of the reason I don't have as many finds as most people. Because I get out there and I start finding caches. I'm like, how many do I really want to find, and how long will it take me to write this up?
So do you usually go back to the online website and log your caches that way so it's easier to type, or are you doing them on your phone?
Gosh. So I of course, I was geocaching before it was a smartphone app. So I'm pretty old-fashioned. I still find it with my handheld GPS. I've got a text file or an XML file on that GPS of the finds. I have a spreadsheet that I put it into on my computer, and then a text file where I will write up all my logs. And of course, they get a couple of passes before I'm happy with them, because the first thing you write isn't necessarily grammatically correct. And
True.
yeah, after the second or third pass, then I start posting. And like for instance, if there are 6 finds, that may take me about 45 minutes to write up, and then another 30 to post, because of course I'm also appending pictures and descriptions and other things I think of.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love when people add pictures to logs, and I don't necessarily do it as much as I should myself. I'm trying to add, I do try to write at least a couple sentences, even on a park and grab. Even if it's just something simple, out grabbing this while running errands for the day or something, just something a little more than thanks for the cash. Yeah, which
awesome.
It's still nice to see. I've literally gotten one that was just a period on one of my cash items. They didn't even type thanks for the cash, FTFC, like just a period. Okay.
Did their other logs have punctuation? Like, what, this cache got a question mark, this one got an asterisk?
I didn't really dig through their logs. I just looked at it. It was like, okay, I know it's a quick park and grab, but really, just period. That's new.
Well, they are making a statement, right?
It is some kind of statement, like, and it's not necessarily wrong. It's just,
no.
As a CO, I like reading the find logs that I get.
Right. And as do I. And, but that goes back to everyone caches in their own way.
They do.
And there really isn't a wrong way to log a cache unless it is, I found it but didn't actually find it.
Yes.
That's the wrong way. But
yes, but don't mark it as logged and put didn't find it. Although I have seen, sometimes you accidentally on the app fat finger it and mark it as found, and I have done that myself. Right. And then somebody messaged me, is like, what did you do here? I was like, oh shoot, let me go fix that, because I just hit the wrong thing on the phone.
Right.
Sometimes that kind of stuff happens, but
well, and there are times too that you have found the cache but can't sign the log. Desperately want to sign the log and call it found, but you just can't get there. Because I seem to remember I was in, another sidebar. We'll get back to the original question eventually. I swear to your listeners, we will get there eventually.
I think I will call this Much Ado About Nothing, because we've gone through so many tangents, but it's all just, I find it all entertaining. Hopefully they'll all find it entertaining. If not, well, then I guess they can skip the episode. But
I guess so. Well, I've got many stories to tell. I mean, you meet me at any geocaching event, and I will talk your ear off on various adventures that either I or other people have gone through. But no, real quick, Atomic Goat's Breath and I were down in Meta, Missouri.
Yes! Oh my God, Meta, Missouri?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my grandparents were there, and I've never met anybody that knew Meta, Missouri that wasn't in that area, so forgive my excitement.
No, that's quite all right.
Yes, my grandparent, my grandpa was originally born in that area, and at some point they moved up here to St. Charles, and then they eventually moved back there when they were all retired and everything. So I've spent many trips going to Meta, Missouri, and for somebody to actually know where the heck that place is that doesn't live like right near it. Oh my gosh.
Well, you can thank Rick and Joy. Rick and Joy actually doesn't live in Meta. He lives in the area, but he placed a few caches down there in Meta. And What brought Atomic Goat's Breath and I that day, of course, was caching. But it was a wintry, cold, bitterly cold day. It just, snowed and iced. And we're walking along very precariously on the side of the bluff. And we get to where the cache is supposed to be, and we can see behind a sheet of ice the cache. This half-inch thick sheet of ice was keeping us from logging the cache. And that kind of raises the question, can you call it a find if you can't get to the log but can see the container? And it's, if only it wasn't for the ice.
Yeah.
And spoilers, that is when Atomic Goat's Breath picked up his walking stick and just started bashing that ice until it gave way. He's like, we are getting this cache. We didn't come all the way here to not make a find. Of course, I've done that a few times myself.
Hey, you know what? If you just busted up the ice, I say go for it. It's as long as you're not damaging the property or something, that's a different story.
Boy.
But going after that ice, because I'm in St. Charles, you're in Columbia, I know where Meta is. That's a bit of a drive for you to get down.
Yeah. Well, geocaching will take you far and wide, and especially in Missouri, it takes you some places that you never knew existed. I mean, a lot of people would look at that, town sign and say, "Oh, there's a Meta, Missouri."
Yes,
how meta?
A lot of people call it Meta. No, it's Meta. Meta, META, Meta. Like I understand why people call it Meta, but that's like Nevada, Missouri. Nevada, Missouri. It's pronounced Nevada, Missouri. If you go there and ask the locals, it's Nevada, but it's spelled Nevada. So anybody not from that area calls it Nevada, Missouri, because it's spelled the same as Nevada.
Right. Missouri has its own pronunciation for things.
It does.
I think the only one that's actually correct, at least in the sphere of mid-Missouri, is Avaz. It's spelled Auxvasse, and I've heard people call it Oxbossy, but it's actually is one of the few places that's pronounced correctly in French as Avaz.
Yeah, yeah, and then most of us, are doing good to speak English correctly, and we just butcher a lot of those French and German names, and
right,
yeah.
By the way, have you been to Des Perez, Missouri?
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
That's not that far from. Like, I kid you not. The first time I ever had to go to Pear on my own, I passed it up, and I had to call my mom. Like, I cannot find anything that says to Pear, and she goes, "How did you spell it when you wrote it down?" And I told her. She goes, "No, it's French." I'm like, "I don't spell French, Mom." And she had to spell it out for me. It was like, "Oh, Des Pierre." Yeah, she's like, no, it's De Pear, not Des Perez. It was like, well, I grew up in the public school system where sound it out. It's
right.
Doesn't work when you're trying to sound out French spellings with the English phonetics.
Oh God, we have a creek here. That feeds into Missouri that has the same problem. It's the Pershey Creek, but it's actually named after a rock arch just off the Katy Trail. The French is, oh gosh, I'm going to mangle the pronunciation. Rocher Percy, I think is what it is. But eventually it got shortened to Percy and then Persh, and now it's just Pershey, or then Pershey, then it's Pershey Creek.
Because none of us can speak French.
Right. But anyway, okay, so you had an original question here.
I don't even remember what it was.
Favorite caches.
Favorite caches, that's what it was.
If I have a favorite cache. How the heck did we get all the way to pronunciations from?
I'm definitely going to call this Much Ado About Nothing, because it's just been so much fun, but we've got on so many tangents, and I'm loving it.
Dear listeners, I apologize in advance, but it has given me plenty of time to think about favorite caches. And actually, there was one, and oh boy, now I've forgotten the name of it from all the side tangents. the name. I'm trying to think of the name. I know where it was. It was there in St. Louis off of the 270 I-44 exchange in Emmenegger Park. Safecracker. The Safecracker cache.
That
was
one.
a bugger. Yeah, it took me 3 tries to get out there and crack that safe. I mean, it's this big, heavy, I say big, it was big enough to encase an ammo box, but heavy metal box with 3 pins. And you had to hold this bloody thing up to your ear and turn the pins and have the right depth to hear the click on each one to open the metal box and get to the ammo can. And apparently, I think it ultimately met its demise. Someone thought it must have been something valuable, and it was chained to a tree, but they pulled down that tree and ripped that cache off of it.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of sad, but man, I can't remember who put that one out, but that was an awesome cache.
I've heard people talk about that one before.
Yes. And of course, now I'm going to bring it back to Central Missouri because that's where I've done a lot of my caching. But the post-apocalyptic fishing hole was very memorable for me, and it's a multi-cache. It's still active, if I recall. But it was placed in a time when there were actually still trails in Rocky Fork Conservation Area. That is no longer the case. Now you have to do some severe bushwhacking to get to each stage. And when I did it, I had the wonderful idea of walking to each stage instead of driving to each parking area. I ended up falling in the lake twice.
Oh, my.
And having to cross a very rickety, nearly falling apart old railroad bridge. I mean, as I walked, pieces were falling off.
Oh, yikes.
Oh, that was an adventure. And of course, if I'm talking like a daily hike, just an easy hike kind of sort of deal, Turkey Creek, which is south side of town in Three Creeks Conservation Area. That one was put out, I believe, by Glenn Rice many, many, many years ago. It's like a really old cache, but it's just your good old ammo box in the woods. Always watch the hunting regulations, of course, because there is quail hunting out there. But yeah, no. And of course, then there's irritation.
Irritation?
Oh, dear Lord. What happened to me during irritation? I mean, I went over the character limit for a geocaching log describing my experience. I had the most misfortune of my life on that cache. It was hunting season.
Okay. And
I didn't realize it, so I ran back to California, Missouri to grab like a temporary hunting vest and some snacks. And nearing sunset, but it's only 1.25 miles to the cache. I'm like, oh, no problem, right? I can rush out there, grab it, and rush back before sunset, be back, in about 40 minutes. Ended up being 4 hours.
Oh.
Because it was underbrush, like it's like river bottom brush.
Oh, okay.
The river would often come up and flood this area, so there was no easy going. So it was dark when I finally got to ground zero.
Oh.
And, I've got my flashlight because I had a little bit of kit with me. And, of course, find the cache. It's like, okay, found it. Great. Now to get back. And that's when my light went out.
Oh, no.
Because the batteries died. And my GPS went out because the batteries died.
Oh.
And I reached my satchel, and there are no batteries to be found. I left them in the car.
Oh, no.
So all I have left are the double A's in my camera.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, well, these got to have a charge. I put in my GPS. My GPS says, oh, low battery.
Oh, jeez.
So I alternated the batteries between my GPS and the flashlight. Finally found an old road. And I'm following this old road. I'm thinking, okay, I'll just take this old road. I'll avoid the brush, right? I'm 3/4 mile from the parking area when a gun goes off near my head.
Oh, my God.
I hit the dirt. And I just say, hey, there's someone out here. The only response, blam, blam, blam. It's like, okay. So now I'm crawling in the dirt in the dark. And I'm going to try to go towards the park, like back into the wood. Because obviously I must have crossed a property line here.
Sounded like it, yeah. That sounds like a property line cross. And they were not happy.
Spoiler, it wasn't a property line cross. There was another reason.
Oh.
But Eventually, I crawled for about a tenth of a mile before I thought I was kind of safe, and just kind of slowly made my way back through the wood and made it back to the parking lot. Of course, there were hunters there, with their campers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And one of them said, "Oh, hey, it's you. We didn't think you'd be coming back." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, well, there was a pack of coyote, and we had to fire our guns at them to get them to go away."
Oh. Yikes.
So that was why there was gunfire. They were chasing the coyote, unfortunately, towards me.
Oh, crap. Wow.
Yeah, word to the wise, sometimes don't do what Unitzoid does. I have a cache there's a cache called Lookout Trail that's all about that. But this was in my early caching days. Always remember, hey kids, here's your educational lesson for the day. Always have extra batteries, 2 light sources, GPS. Someone knows where you are. And always look at what your next destination is and kind of know which direction. Have a compass. It's good to have extra geocaching gear for emergencies.
Yeah. Yeah, but
I now carry almost a full backpack of gear. If it's a hike or anything more than half a mile, backpack goes on.
Yeah, good call. So that cache was named Irritation?
Yes.
Wow, that is ironically
and other people
well named for that experience. Maybe
read
Hero
the logs.
might have been a little better one, but Irritation sounds pretty fitting.
But no, read those logs. Other people have had similar experiences going out for that cache.
That's awesome. I mean, it's not awesome. It's awesome because nobody got hurt, but it's
right.
Wow. So
yeah, why is that a favorite? It was so memorable.
Don't do Irritation in the dark.
No.
Jeez. Wow.
I'm trying to think of other favorite caches. I mean, I've got a whole slew of caches I've loved. I mean, geocaching has taken me all across, well, I won't say across the world, but many other countries, other places. I've been to Niagara Falls 3 times now, only because of geocaching. By the way, go to Niagara Falls. It's awesome. Especially if you go to Goat Island, which is on the American side, and explore the island. Don't just go to the falls. No. Yes, that's the island that's that separates the Horseshoe and the American Falls.
Are there goats on the island?
On the American side of the border. No, not anymore. Oh. It's been many years since there are goats. But the reason I say explore the island is that there are many smaller falls and cascades that are often overlooked. Because everyone flocks to Niagara Falls. It's the big falls. They want to be there. And there's so many people. But if you walk around this island, there's so many peaceful and gorgeous spots, and there's not a soul to be found because they're all looking at the big attraction.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But I've gotten to see the largest sugar maple in Canada. Same trip. Golly, I mean, of course, all the roadside oddities.
Yeah.
All the weird things, like the largest rocking chair in the world.
Yes, that's
the largest check painted egg.
Sullivan, no, not Sullivan, Missouri. It's Illinois. Shoot, where is Moga Martinsville, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
They have some stuff like that. I think it's been called like the biggest little town or the little town with the biggest things or something, because they have different things like that. Yeah. And then of course, if you like that kind of stuff, there's the Route 66 Adventure Lab series.
Right.
That's perfect for that kind of thing if you want to go trek it halfway across the country. You can see a lot of it that way.
Oh yes. The revival of the virtual with the adventure labs. Maybe they'll just start calling them adventures and drop the lab part. It'll become official.
I have heard some people call them adventure caches. Some still call them adventure labs. It's kind of a mix on what they're called right now. And at this point, I don't really know what the proper terminology for it is.
Well, I think it's still officially an adventure lab.
I think the app still calls it when you open up the lab, or when you open up the app to do them, I think it still says Adventure Lab on it. But I've heard
I think you are correct.
Start calling them adventure caches.
Mm-hmm. Which is a better naming than challenge caches. I don't know if you were involved with that when they killed it in 2005.
I was not.
Not 2005. Sorry, 2000. Oh, geez, 2015 is when. So
I have been actively caching for 3 years now. But if you look on my geocaching profile, it says I signed up back in 2014. But I never found my first cache until like 5 years later. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. So those don't quite match up. It's one of those, I heard about it, I signed up, and then never did anything with it, and then remembered it several years later. It's like, oh, let's go try this.
Right on.
So yeah.
But no, the challenge cache is basically you could say, oh, it's almost like a new type of virtual, and you had to do a thing to qualify, right? So you had to go to this location and give a name, or you had to do X number of push-ups in this park, or silly things. Or there was one that was like a climbing challenge, like, oh, you have to ring the bell and climb this pole. I tried that one. That was down in Lebanon, Missouri, and that cold winter day trying to get up that pole to ring that bell was difficult. And then, of course, geocaching said, this isn't working out, so we're going to kill the whole project. Sorry, these fines don't count. I think a lot of that was because people were abusing it.
Oh.
Like people would say, oh, just tell me hi. Congratulations, you got a fine. Things that did not require any effort whatsoever. And we kind of went against the spirit of it.
Okay.
Of course, this was before smartphones were really prevalent. Now that smartphones are prevalent and we have the Adventure Lab, it can actually say, oh, were you there? Did you do the thing?
Yeah, the location you have to be within so many feet of for it to unlock to answer it. So that makes
And I apologize for all the... Oh, sorry, I was going to apologize for all the angry email either I or you are going to receive for getting the date wrong for challenge caches. I had it written down. I have since lost it. I know it was a thing. I just can't remember the date. So I apologize. I'm sure there's someone out there saying, no, Unitzoid, you're wrong. It was this year. How could you not remember that?
Probably is someone. Or they're laughing at us because we can't figure it out.
Right.
Maybe a little of both.
There'll be needs to be an addendum to this podcast to say, oh, the date was actually this.
Oh, it has been so much fun talking with you about so many things today.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
We'll have to do this again.
Yeah. Oh, if anybody ever finds that it's Maplewood, you have got to, I've got it on my watch list because I am dying to see whoever finds that. We will definitely have to talk about that again and see if we can get that person or people in on it, because that is just...
Yes.
Most definitely. Yes. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this. And I've had a blast, and I apologize to the listeners for all the tangents, but that's not entirely new to them if they've listened before to me. So,
well, and if you suddenly see a pitch change in voice, just know that part was edited out. That was when Unitzoid just went on too long.
Yeah, we'll see how much I edit. I tend to leave a lot of tangents in, which... which may or may not thrill some people, but that's okay. It's gonna be, I'm gonna add to the title. I am gonna call it Much to Do About Nothing. Subtitle: It's Maplewood, an unfound cache with a lot of tangents. I think that's what I'll call it. So they'll have a warning.
Right on.
They'll have a warning.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Absolute gas.
This has been so much fun.
Thank you for listening to Geocache Adventures. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Have you heard of FTF Magazine? It's the magazine for geocachers, filled with articles and snippets sent in by geocachers just like you. I'm a subscriber myself, and I love it. Check them out today at tftgeo.com and tell them Shadow Dragon 1 sent you. Would you like to be a guest on a show or have a topic you'd like to hear covered? Reach out and let me know. Just go to the geocacheadventures.org website and click on the contact page to reach out.